بینندگان بسیار عزیز، سوزی خاتمی هستم. خوشحال هستم که در یکی دیگر از سری برنامه‌های آرویو با شما همراه هستم. تهیه کننده و مجری این برنامه که به مدت 50 دقیقه در خدمتتون خواهم بود با مهمانان عزیزی که هر هفته به برنامه‌ها دعوت میشن. و قبل از هر چیز یادآور میشم که قسمت توی درایو پراجکت متل چیلدرنز هاسپیتال رو ازتون سپاسگزار هستم که با من همراهی میکنید و تشکری دارم ویژه از مدیریت تلویزیون اندیشه که اجازه دادن امسال ما هم در این رابطه‌ای که من اسباب بازی ها رو جمع آوری میکنم و به بیمارستان میبرم که دل بچه ها رو شاد بکنم در ایام تعطیلات، اجازه دادن به من که این تبلیغات رو در تلویزیون اندیشه هم داشته باشم و ممنون سپاسگزار تک تک شما هستم که لطف کردید از راه دور و نزدیک این پروژه توی درایو رو با من همکاری میکنید. و اما برنامه‌های آرویو رو لطف کنید حتما شیر کنید در فیسبوک، در یوتیوب چنل سوزی خاتمی که میبینید که دوستان هم بتونن بیشتر برنامه‌ها رو ببینن و همراه یکدیگر باشید. در برنامه امروز بسیار خوشحال هستم که دو تن از مهمانان بسیار عالی قدر رو که دعوت کردم به برنامه تشریف آوردن که یکی از این مهمانان عزیز آقای دامین الویس هستن که انگلیسی هستن و یک نقاش بسیار معروفی هستن از کشور انگلستان که البته در آمریکا در لس آنجلس استودیو دارن در شهر سانتا مونیکا، ولی اصل انگلیسی نژاد هستن و دعوت برنامه رو پذیرفتن. و خانم عزیزشون که محبت کردن، خانم لوان، ایشون هم تشریف آوردن چرا که هم از دوستان بسیار خوب من هستن و گذشته از اون منیجر شوهرشون هستن و تمامی کارها رو به عهده دارن. دعوت رو پذیرفتن. خوشحال هستم که در خدمتشون هستیم که بتونید با کارهای آقای دامین الویس که به تازگی از موزه از فرانسه به اینجا آمدن با ما دنبال کنید، چون میدونم خیلی از شما اهل هنر هستید و دنبال روی هنرمندان. از این لحظه به بعد به زبان انگلیسی برنامه رو ارائه میکنیم تقدیم حضورتون. امیدوارم که شما رو همچنان بیننده این شو داشته باشید. Thank you so much for accepting the invitation and being on my show.
Well, thank you
it's
so
a
much
great
for
pleasure.
inviting us.
Yes, thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Suzi.
Sorry about the few minutes talking in Farsi for our viewers to just give them a little insight of what's going on today with our show and a little introduction. Needless to say, the actual show starts right now with the two of you. And I already mentioned briefly to my viewers, very, very briefly, who you are, the reason for my invitation and the fact that you guys are here and the fact that we've been friends for a while, and I'm honored to have you here.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
So, going about Damian Elwes's introduction and who he is. He's a British artist, live in Santa Monica. His studio is in Santa Monica. He's a graduate of Harvard University, which I'm sure most Iranians do know that university and are well aware of what kind of a people graduates from Harvard. Tell us about your background, if you don't mind.
I grew up in London as a child.
So did I, by the way.
Did you?
Yes.
And my father was a painter, and my grandfather was a painter. My grandfather was a royal portrait painter for many years.
Beautiful.
And he painted, I was told that the royal family, their favorite paintings are his portraits of their...
Isn't that cool?
Yes, of the Queen and her father and her grandfather and all of this.
And how did your grandfather get into that? Because I'm sure it's not easy to be able to become a painter of the royal family. I mean, you either have to have ties or be extremely
intelligent. He was just really good at painting portraits.
There we
his
go.
Portraits are just very beautiful post-impressionist. So, you know, the impressionists, they painted with dots. The post-impressionism was a little bit more expressive. And so he managed to make portraits in that style.
Wow.
And they're very beautiful. And yes, then he came to America in the 20s and 30s and painted all of the society in America as well.
Amazing.
So years ago when I was doing a little show in New York, somebody called me from a gallery in New York and said, "Are you related to Simon Elwes?" And I said, "Yes, that's my grandfather." And they said, "Okay, we have a gallery on Park Avenue called Portraits Incorporated." And he was our first artists that we hired.
How amazing.
And we have his portfolios here, and he's painted everybody from Lady Bird Johnson to the Vanderbilts and the Whitneys and everybody, and we don't know what to do with all these photographs. Would you like them? I said, just hold on, I'll be in a taxi, I'll be right there in 10 minutes.
Oh boy, isn't that amazing though?
Amazing, yeah.
And they must be costing
Beautiful,
fortunes, no?
Beautiful,
For the,
yeah. So his paintings have been in the Met and all over
what
the
an
place.
honor.
Yeah.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
Because usually when I interview artists, normally one of my very first question is like, how did you become an artist? Why? Is it someone in your family who did this, or you just are the first one? Well, naturally, from what I hear from Damian, not only his father, but his grandfather was a painter. So
and my
there we
daughter
go.
is at the art school right now, so there might be 4 generations.
Oh my
coming.
goodness, isn't that amazing? How lucky
Yes,
for you.
Very lucky.
So do you get hold of your grandfather's paintings? Where are they mostly?
Yes, I have
now?
a
In
beautiful
museums or
portrait
what?
that he did of my father when my father was a little boy. And that is, but they're mostly in people's houses because they don't want to ever get rid of them. That's their family.
Of course.
In fact, my portraits of Lewanne and my children are the paintings that I value the most.
I bet.
You know, if there was
I
a
bet.
fire, that's what I would take out of the house after rescuing the.
That is so sweet.
Thank
You
goodness
see?
for that.
Oh, that's so sweet.
Yeah.
I love to
Yeah.
see you guys and the love that you share. It gives me a lot of hope that there are family and there are family so united, so loving. You are a great example.
thank you.
Really,
Thank
really.
Thank you.
That's amazing.
Well,
and
she's
that's
brought
because
so much love into my life and so much. Yeah.
you guys
Yeah,
are a
this is
great
a-
example of a loving family. Seriously, we need
Thank
more
you.
people of you in the society nowadays.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Yes,
so-
that's we always joke with each other, but we mean it seriously. We won the love lottery.
Oh, that is so cool, and I testify to that absolutely. I see that you can feel it when you're around them. That's
you.
lovely, and 2 beautiful children that you guys raised.
Yeah.
That we
Yes.
come to that.
Okay.
But let's move now from the fact that you got that from your granddad, then your
Yes.
father. So, what
Well,
kind of
so-
a painting did your dad do?
Well,
then?
first, my father was also a portrait painter.
Portrait painting.
And I remember when I was a child, just very few times going to my grandfather's studio or going to my father's studio. And one time I was in my father's studio, the man that he was painting got up to stretch his legs or have a cigarette or something. And my father said, "Would you like to come and fill in the sky? I love the way you paint skies." And so I was given the brush and some oil paint, and I never really knew how to use that. And I made
How
the
old were
sky.
you?
I was about 14.
Oh,
And
that's
so that,
nice.
or maybe a little younger, maybe 12 actually. And it was so exciting.
I bet.
But then, unfortunately, my father and grandfather both died when I was 15.
Sorry to
And
hear
they-
that. It's almost same
They're
time.
almost the same
Close to
time, one after another.
Sorry.
But before they died that summer, they had asked me, "Would you do a little painting?" Because it would be really wonderful to have 3 generations of Elwes
I see.
artists in the Royal Academy in the summer show. That never happened because they both passed away. But then they left me all of their brushes and easels and all of the paints and everything.
Yeah.
And at that point, I was so sad that I didn't want to be an artist anymore.
I don't blame you.
So I put it all away in storage.
Yeah.
And I went to Harvard and I did playwriting. And I was
good
studying
for
playwriting,
you.
which is similar because I love telling stories. So
Yeah.
as you'll see, I'm a
Well,
storyteller.
yeah, exactly. In all your paintings and in so much paying attention to the details that you can see by checking out his paintings, that so much detail is unbelievable. And the storytelling,
So then at Harvard, my playwriting professor, after 4 years, he gave me a graduation present. It was Matisse's palette knife.
There we go.
Henri Matisse had given it to Alice B. Toklas, and she had given it to my professor, and he said, "I think you should have this." And I said, "What? You don't like my playwriting?"
Are you insulting me? Are you telling me something?
Moving me on in a new direction? What?
He said, "I'm just saying, Damian, all of your stories are about an artist who hasn't quite found what they're doing." And I said, "Oh, okay." So then I went to New York and I was working on a film. And one day I was just given a walkie-talkie and I had to do crowd control, which wasn't very interesting because I was just keeping people away from the filming. I wasn't seeing what was going on at all. And one day I was keeping everybody in the subway station at Penn Station. And when I let them out, there was Keith Haring drawing on the posters.
Uh-huh.
And I said, well, your job looks a lot more fun than mine.
So that sparkled you.
Well, he said, do you know how to draw? Do you know how to paint? I said, I can't paint, but I draw every day. And he said, well, that's what I'm doing. So pick up some chalk and help me, because I have 6 posters that I have to fill here.
My goodness.
And I said, well, I can't, because I'm working for this film director out there. And he went on, inspiring me and telling me, listen, you said you can't paint, but it's so easy now. You go and buy a little crate of spray paint, and you find an empty wall in the city, and you just cut. When you draw with spray paint, it becomes a painting. And I said, okay, I'll do that. And then a few days later, I met him again, and he
coincidentally,
said,
or
coincidentally, I was
Oh
going
my-
to a party.
There we go.
I was going to a party in the East Village, and I was walking along the street, and he was walking next to me with a 6-pack of beer. And I said, Keith. And he said, Damian, did you do your painting
Oh my
yet?
goodness.
And
you
I said,
see?
no, I haven't done it. Then he spent the whole night telling me, I drew for years, and then when I started painting the first time with my friends on trains at night, then I haven't stopped painting every day. And so he filled me full of this, and by the end he said, next time I see you, I don't want to hear that you haven't done a painting.
No
I
excuses.
know. No excuses. And so then I was in complete luck, because I didn't know where an empty wall was, but then the next weekend, Sidney Lumet, the director I was working for, called me and said, you have the keys to my building, but we're moving office. So can you go there, be there all weekend, and watch everybody moving all my stuff, make sure it all goes from West 56th Street to that beautiful brownstone that we had over to my new office on West 57th Street. So I did that. And at the end of the weekend, I realized I had a key to an empty building
There you go.
that wasn't going to be knocked down for 2 years or for a year. I was there for a year, just painting inside there and
Wow.
covering
So that
it full
gave
of
you
paintings.
the whole
It was incredible.
opportunity to do what
It
you
was
wanted
incredible.
to do.
It was
But
incredible.
isn't that amazing that
Yes.
how some people can affect your life and basically change completely your
Completely,
Yeah.
I
your
know.
Change the
future
course.
He
and
was
the
so
course of your-
generous, Keith Haring. I don't think artists these days, have the time to help young artists.
Nobody has
and to,
time, let alone
Yeah,
artists.
yeah,
Nobody has
yeah.
time nowadays to
Yeah.
do anything, even if they're
That's
good
right.
people with a good heart.
That's
It's just
right.
like people don't have time nowadays,
Yeah.
which is really sad.
It is sad.
But that's
Yeah.
amazing
It
that
was an
that's the
amazing
beginning
story.
of you.
And then it kept getting
Did you
better.
tell him about your father and
No,
grandfather
not
being?
really. I said
So he
yes.
didn't even know
no,
that?
I did. I said my father and grandfather were painters, but I don't know how to use a brush. That's what I said to him.
Wow.
So then the biggest gallery in London came to New York to look for graffiti artists, and somebody said, there's an English graffiti artist on West 56th Street. And Robert Fraser said, no, there's no English graffiti artist. There's no graffiti in London. This was in the 80s. And they said, well, go and look at his building on West 56th Street.
And that's where they found you.
So he came, and by that time, the city kept locking me out of the building with big locks on the door. So I had to find a way to get in there.
Amazing.
Is that too much?
No,
No, it's-
So one night I went over my roof to the next door, which was a theater, but that door was locked. So I could go in through the theater when the theater was open, but not back.
Not after the
back,
hours, right.
Yeah, not after hours. So then I looked from the back of my building, and there was a fire escape. And it was only about 2 feet from another fire escape on this old hotel, 3-star hotel that's there. And I looked at all the rooms in that hotel, and I saw one room where the lights were never on at night. And in the day, it looked all gray in there. And so one day, I really didn't want to lose all my paintings, so I had to do this. I climbed up and went up to the 7th floor, and I opened the window, and the window opened. And I went
That was
in.
lucky.
Lucky.
Totally.
Then I went inside, and it was full of grey carpets, covered in thick with dust. The floor was thick with dust.
It
Nobody
was
had
a
been in
nobody
there.
was
storage
saying
room.
that.
It was a
Oh,
room
that
was
that they
Full
were
of
storing
storage.
extra furniture in.
And
But
then-
it was a
Waiting
hotel
for
room
Damien
Waiting
to
for-
walk in.
with a bathroom and everything,
The first
but,
thing I
but
did-
no one using it.
The first thing I did, I went into the little bathroom and turned the tap, and I had water. I was like, yes, I have water.
Amazing.
And so that
What
became...
year was this, Damien?
This was 1983.
Okay.
Yeah. So then that became the entrance to my studio. So by the time the British Gallery came to, I was bringing him to, and every day I would buy a newspaper in the hotel from the doorman. And so after about a week, he would say, "Good morning, Mr. Elwes, your Herald Tribune." And then the people at the desk would hear that, and so they would all say in a row, "Good morning, Mr. Elwes. Good morning, Mr. Elwes. Good morning." They thought I lived there.
Exactly.
And so when I came in with the gallery. When I came in with this gallery, everybody was like, "Good morning, your newspaper. Good morning, Mr. Elwes." And the gallery said, "What? Your studio is in a hotel? That's crazy." And I said, "Just wait, it's a little crazy."
Till you see. Wait till you see.
And so we go up to the 7th floor. I open the door. By that time, I'd put some tape on the inside of the door. I had to open it with a credit card because I didn't have a key.
Goodness.
And I know.
What you
a little bit of a cat
My
burglar.
painting clothes were in there. I saw that on a movie, so I just copied it.
Movies help sometimes.
And so my painting clothes were in there. I collected my painting clothes. We went out through the window, down to the 4th floor, crossed onto the other fire escape, and the gallery said to me, "Damian, I don't care what your paintings are like. This is the coolest studio I've ever seen. You're in the show.
Agree.
You're in the show. It's with Jean-Michel Basquiat and Keith Haring, and you're in it." And that was the beginning.
The rest is history.
The rest is history. Yes.
That is amazing. You guys hear what Damian is telling us about. That shows when we have a passion and we want to go after it, nothing really stops us. That's what I believe in. If you really want something and if you're passionate about something, you go after it no matter what. As you just heard what Damian is telling us about how he actually started with his studio, his painting, and all the rest of it, and how people actually found him. And, and you know, one thing led to another, and here you are. And so
it
then
got better even.
tell us. Yeah, totally. That's what I have you here to tell us this story about Damian Elwes.
I went to London, and my art dealer introduced me to Jean-Michel Basquiat. That was an incredible story, but I won't go into it yet quite. So then I said to my art dealer, "You know, I don't just want to be a graffiti artist. I met Warhol in New York. He actually photographed me at Harvard." With my friends, I said, "I don't want to just be a graffiti artist. If I'm only famous for 15 minutes, please don't let me just be a graffiti artist. I want to be a painter. I really want to learn to paint." And he said, "Well, what do you want to do about that? Because you don't know how to paint. Do you want to go back to art school?" And I said, "No, I'm going to go to Paris, and I'm going to go to every artist studio that I can find in Paris. Just knock on the doors wherever I smell turpentine or linseed oil and ask them, can I make a drawing or a painting of your studio?"
I see.
And I did that for 2 years. I walked all over
What
Paris.
an interesting thing, though. I mean,
Yeah.
how did that come to your mind? To just
Well,
go and
you know,
do painting?
I didn't actually tell him immediately that. I went to Paris and I didn't know what to do. I didn't have a
I
studio.
see.
I didn't know what to do. And so the first day I went to the Bateau Lavoir, where Picasso had a studio in a famous studio at the turn of the century, where he painted Demoiselle d'Avignon and all of that. But all the tourists go there still, but there's nothing there because it burned to the ground in the 70s.
Right.
So the next day I went to a Matisse studio on the Quai Saint-Michel, and that's a fancy apartment now, so I couldn't get in through the concierge. So the next
Doesn't always work.
Now I can. Now I can go
Of
into any
course,
studio, and that's what I do.
yes.
I've been to every Matisse and Picasso studio that exists.
I'm sure.
I think maybe the only person who's ever done that. But I've got lots of good stories about that. But anyway, so then the next day I went to the Pompidou Center and I saw a Matisse painting and a Picasso painting side by side. And I looked at it for about 4 hours. And tears started coming to my eyes as I realized I really am a painter. I didn't want to be a painter, but my father was a painter, my grandfather, my professor was right, Keith Haring was right. I love painting, I love color, I love form. This is what I'm going to do.
That's amazing.
And so,
how old were you, Damian? You got that feeling of.
I was 24.
Okay.
Yeah, 24. And so then, or 23 really, but so then the next day, I went to a museum called the Gustave Moreau Museum in Paris. And the reason I went there was because that's where Matisse learned to paint. Gustave Moreau would give lessons to young painters.
I see.
And I sat there on the spiral staircase that exists there, and you can see 2 floors, a huge, beautiful studio with all his paintings, and another beautiful studio with all his paintings, and people walking around up there and people walking around there. And that interested me to do a drawing. And so I started doing a drawing of those two floors, one on top of the other. And in that moment, while I was doing that, I had the idea, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to every contemporary artist studio that I can find and knock on the doors. And of course, after I did the first one, people would open the door with a chain on the door and go,
Who's
me?
this?
And I would say yes. And they were, I've been told your studio is really interesting, and they were flattered. And they said, okay, if you don't disturb me, if you sit in the corner and
Quietly.
you don't say a word, and you can do your painting. And so I would sit there, and actually my French was very bad, so it wasn't.
And your painting was with what?
Just watercolors or
Just
drawings, or what?
Okay.
If they let me stay longer, I do a little oil painting, but mostly just watercolors or drawings. And really, I was.
Watercolor very difficult though.
No, I love it. I love it. It's
Because
I
I
mean,
did
it can
when I
be.
was young, and I noticed that
It
as
can
soon
be.
as I mixed the colors, it would just run to different colors because it's hard to control
Yeah,
it. You know,
but
like
that's good.
when you pick a
you know.
brush and you,
Yeah, but
you
you
want to
see
do
little,
some.
but you know, little children, they just do it naturally, and little children, I watch children painting because I learn from them. They just mix them all up, and it looks great, you know. So it's okay, it's all right. That all works.
That's beautiful.
But I do think the fact that he is such a good draftsman, he can draw. He's learned to control
That's it.
the
Yes, of course.
the watercolor on the brush, how much is applied. So it's always fun
Totally.
to watch him.
Yeah, for an expert, everything seems
Yes,
it
it
sounds
sounds
easy.
easy. It's
But for
fun.
people like me who have no clue, you pick a brush and you mix them and you just go, oh my God, I can't control these colors are all mishmash.
Well, you can start by doing a drawing and then just coloring it in with your watercolors. That's a good way to start. And then what you're aiming for is to start not making the drawing with the paintbrush, just as Lewanne said, so that you're drawing with the paint. And when you draw with the paint, that becomes a painting. Yeah.
I see. So at what point did you guys meet? When did Lewanne come to your life, or you go to Lewanne's life? At
Should
what?
I answer that?
Yeah.
Yes, please tell us. All the secrets.
Well,
Lewanne?
yes, the secrets. Well, I graduated from college and came to work in California in a conceptual art gallery called Asher 4.
Uh-huh.
And so we met each other really when I was just out of school, maybe 21, 22 years old. It wasn't destined to be at that point. But
Well, she was the most beautiful woman I've ever seen in my life.
Oh, she really is. She truly is
I fell
inside
in
and
love.
out a beautiful
I fell
lady.
in love the moment I saw her, met her, talked to her, you know, with a smile in her eyes, just...
Very true.
Yeah,
You guys.
yeah.
I second that.
flattery, my goodness.
No, it's true. But she didn't fall in love immediately, so I had
Well,
to go
I
away.
was young. I was young. He's 6 years older, and we were in different places in our life. But I remember visiting his show, and which was at a gallery right next door to the conceptual art gallery that I
That
was
you were
working in.
Right.
We were really introduced through a friend, his kind of college roommate, happened to be a collector that would come into the gallery that I worked in.
see.
And so one day when I was walking to buy lunch for the gallery people, all of us would sit down and have lunch every day. So someone had to set out to the market to pick things up. This was in West Hollywood. And so David drove by in a convertible, and Damian was with him.
I see.
And that's kind of our first meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how they said, well, Damian's having a show at the Kaz Gallery next door, so please come and see it.
I see.
So I did go and see the show, and I thought it was fantastic. It was beautiful paintings. A conceptual art gallery has a lot different work, a lot to explain to people who come in, because it can be quite difficult, quite psychological. But his show was full of these amazing paintings of Cartagena, and they were just selling like that, which was not something I was used to. We usually dealt with a lot of museums and things, but to see that crowd and buying those paintings, and I went away saying, wow, he's a really talented, very, very talented artist. Next day at work, I was sitting at a desk like this with another friend of mine from high school called Suzi.
Oh my goodness, I thought that was the only friend that called
No,
Suzi.
no. I guess some of my closest friends are called Suzi. And so I was just saying, hey, you know, that was a really amazing show I went to last night of Damian Elwes's work, and he's such a sweet guy. And she said, well, he is, but you know he's married. And I was like, well, no, I did not know he was married, but I'm not bringing him up for that reason.
Yeah,
I just said it was a great show.
artist.
And she was like, yeah, I was just letting you know. And so the phone rang, picked it up, Asher 4 Gallery, may I help you? And he said, hi, Lewanne, this is Damian. I said, hi, Damian. My friend Suzi kind of looked at me and was like, He said, you know, I was wondering if maybe we could have some dinner sometime. And I said, you know, Damian, are you married? And he said, you know, I'm legally separated, but yes, I'm still married. And I said, well, you know what? You figure out your personal life and then come back and ask me out for dinner.
Good for you.
And then we did not see each other again because after that point, he went to go sort out his life. He moved and lived and painted in Italy and Rome and Venice, Morocco, traveled the world. And 3 years later, lo and behold, at a friend of ours' house, a mutual friend, not that we knew we had this mutual friend.
Total surprise.
Yeah,
Total surprise. We were sitting next to each other in it was kind of a candlelit room. And we started talking for a minute, and then he immediately stood up and he said, Lewanne? And I said, Damian? And he said, oh my gosh.
Wow.
Before I lose you for another 3 years.
You're going to give me your...
Can I get your number,
I need to
please?
get your number right now. And so
then
that became our beginning, really. We started to date. He had sorted out his personal life. It was many years later. I was 25. He was 31.
The timing was right.
The timing
And I have to
was
tell you,
right.
they have 2 beautiful children, a daughter and a son.
Yes.
And either of them are interested in painting.
Well,
you said your daughter.
doing actually art, but she's more of a filmmaker, video art,
Performance
and
art.
performance art. Yes,
Okay.
and installation art is what she's doing at St. Martin's in London. Yeah.
But she
And
has his natural ability to draw. She's very motivated. He's a very self-motivated artist. He loves to work.
And you manage all his work, I hear,
yes,
right?
Yeah,
From day one? From the
Yeah.
moment
pretty much once we started dating.
It's a dream. It's a dream for an artist to have somebody who can organize it all. And
I bet.
Keep
Yes.
everything moving and to the right place, the galleries, and deal with it all. And it's a it couldn't
Luckily,
even-
when we did, run into each other again and began, dating each other, I had left the art gallery that I'd worked in. I had gone more into consulting, helping clients find paintings for their houses, whether it be in Hawaii or here in Los Angeles or various places. So I had kind of that time so we did, 6 months into our relationship, we put on a show on Market Street in Venice, an independent show without a gallery, which is brave, and did really, really well, and that began my work with him, and so I'm really his advocate. I'm here to make sure that he gets where he has to be on time, that work gets delivered on time.
That's very true and very needed, like Damian mentioned, because for an artist, artists are not business people. They just love their art, love what they do, and the rest is somebody else's business.
Yeah. And there's a lot of paperwork. There's a lot of paying sales tax when you make a sale, contracts with galleries, archiving all of the photographs, just really keeping up with all the correspondence because you have to, when people reach out to you, you have to strike when the iron is hot. You have to be on it. So we're a team. We're a cottage
That's
industry.
lovely.
I
That's
help
lovely.
him
But
keep
even
up
I
with
think
it.
even the most valuable thing for me is she has incredible taste. So for me, I'm able to invite her into the studio several times a day to come and look at a painting and see how it's going, and she automatically knows, because I can't be objective as an artist. So
Yeah.
sometimes I'm just going down the wrong path, but she will know, no, nobody's going to want to have that in their house, you know. And so start again and try that approach again.
How many hours do you work a day? Do you spend time on each of your, artwork?
Too long, many.
Long time?
Yes, from morning until late night, really. Yeah.
And do you
Yeah.
concentrate on one painting at a time, or do you
Yes.
start on separate
I try-
projects and go from one to next when you get
it's a good
tired of one?
It's a good question. So yes, you definitely, when you've done too much on one, or you think it's, you put it aside.
Right.
Even turn it to the wall so you can't see it, because then you need to see it fresh. Or so I move from one thing to the other, and a painting will generally take about 2 months to be finished.
months,
But
right.
it can be.
3
It
months.
varies.
It can be
Of
years.
course, there is
It can
no
be-
there is no
yes,
definite.
It can be a
really-
year. It can be a year before. I mean, I put paintings in storage, thinking that I'm stuck with the painting. Put it away in storage, bring it back a few years later, and then it's easy to finish it.
That's
you know?
right.
And
That's
It
right.
is, sometimes it's very good to set aside the work and come back to it months or even years later. He's a really hard worker. The fortunate thing is that we ended up building a studio on our property in Santa Monica. When the kids were babies, when, Aubrey was our son, he was 2 years old, and Cosima was 5 years old, Damian had rented a studio in Venice. We were living in Santa Monica. Not a long commute,
But still, it's hard.
It was really hard.
Right.
It was the kids, if he were home, the kids would get in their bed and go to sleep really easily. For me, they'd be running around and,
That's true.
and we wouldn't see him much.
No. Yeah.
And so when we decided to build the studio, that meant that he could work 10, 12 hours a day. And some days he might just do research. Some Saturdays he'll take a little break and watch Manchester United. He's a big soccer
of
fan.
course. You cannot be British if you're not a big soccer fan.
That's
Even
right.
people like myself who grew up in England, we're not British, but that's
still-
how we learned that
Exactly.
you have to become a
Yes.
fan of.
But
I s-
having him always there, having the building separate, because I do think that just that little, 20
Space.
feet between the main house and his
And the
studio
studio.
separates that this is the place of business and work and the
Totally.
place that people can come and see the work. But then the kids were able to go into the studio and do their homework on the floor, or have, be with their dad, so that he could continue his work but also have contact with the
With
family,
the
which I'm so grateful
that's
for.
wonderful.
Yeah.
Now, as we're talking to you, my viewers, and for you guys that are, appreciating art, paintings, we're talking to Damian Elwes, and he's had many exhibitions. The latest he had was in France, not too long ago, which now you're seeing some of the paintings that it was in the exhibition over there. And the length of that exhibition was about 6 months, no? Or
Yes.
how long were you
yes,
there
it
in
was.
France?
It was from January. Did it start? In January
Yes,
until
it started
September.
last January and ran through September. So
And
it
how
was-
many
most of the
paintings
year.
did you end up taking there?
There were
And
about 40 large paintings.
40 large.
Yeah.
And you had them in the exhibition, and you actually sold a few? Was that
Yes,
the
we
purpose?
sold a few, but it wasn't the purpose. No,
But
the
that was not the
purpose
purpose. The purpose
publicity,
was-
yeah.
It was a
Yes.
museum show,
That's
so
right.
it's a museums, many of them are non-profit. So it wasn't really about selling, because of course the paintings were really out of commission. They would be in the museum for 9 to 10 months.
Absolutely.
People usually want to buy and
they
have
wanna
it
take
right
it,
away.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
But yeah, there were a few sales, but mostly it was the ability to do a show in such an important city for many of the
Of course,
artists that
of
he has
course.
painted.
So it was right next to the Louvre.
Louvre, yes.
And so we had 120,000 visitors.
That's amazing.
Enormous. That's probably more
Yeah.
than have seen all my other 20 shows
That's
combined.
amazing.
Yeah.
And yet again, I'm not amazed and surprised knowing Damian and his artwork and his art collection and what he has. And, as you can see some of them. But I asked to make sure we have his website, rather, in our TV, so you can take a look in your own timing and check it out in his website. You can find out more about what Damian does. Because last week I was talking to some friends who are the love of arts and following artists, and I told them about you. They were very excited to see this show, and I know some people really, really appreciate painters and artists like yourself. So
Yes.
that's great. On that note, what I want to find, first of all, I have so much to talk about, and I don't want to miss out. One part we missed about your story, telling us about you and Lewanne moving away from the States and having lived in
The rainforest in
the
Colombia.
rainforest in Colombia. Now, that I bet had a lot of effects on your artwork, the fact that you lived in the nature for so many years.
That's right.
And there is a big article on Vogue that I'm sure if they go to your website, they can check it out as well.
Yeah.
And so tell us about that trip and a little about that experience being in Colombia.
Okay, I'll start. Many years ago, before I went to Harvard, I backpacked across South America, and I fell in love with South America, and particularly the rainforest. And I was able to go back there a few years later, about 10 years later actually, and by that time I was selling paintings for about $5,000 each, and I managed to buy 20 acres with a forest. It's just a beautiful place, in a very ancient place, in an island of mountains sticking out of the Amazon rainforest, where there's just Indians, no cars, just horses, no TV, no cell phones, no computers.
A place that I want to run into now.
Yes.
Yes, and you
Yes.
can go there.
Yes.
We will send
really,
you there.
the Garden of Eden, it really is. Just fruit and growing everywhere, and animals and birds, beautiful birds and butterflies. And every day we saw a miracle of nature that just changed our perception of everything.
I bet.
And so after I'd been together with Lewanne just for about a couple of years. Or
No,
a
it was
year.
it was about 9 months. We had done, I told you, we did a
Right.
show, rented a space on Market Street in Venice, and we had a very successful show, and we didn't have to share any of the profits. So he said to me, he was like, we could go to this beautiful farm I have on the edge of the rainforest in Colombia and live like kings for the rest of our lives on this money.
Wow. Wow.
And I said, "Oh my goodness, what? What? You have a house in Colombia in the rainforest?" And he said, "Yes. I never really, I loved it and I bought it. For about 20 acres for $5,000, and I wasn't sure I'd ever live there permanently." But, now that we've been together, I can see that you're somebody that would really, really love
Enjoy
it there.
it and appreciate it.
I
Right.
didn't even have a passport a U.S. passport. I was just had traveled maybe to Mexico and Canada when you didn't need a
Exactly.
passport.
The driver's license would do at a time.
So I was like, are you kidding me? I'm going to take off of work and go to this remote place. Well, lo and behold, I did. I got my passport, took 3 weeks off of work, and went to visit this amazing place. And it just, I connected so much.
You fell in love with it. Oh.
I felt it deep inside of me genetically, in my DNA is a farmer, obviously. And it's more than a farm. We grow organic coffee, but it's under forest. We're not trying to clear land or farmland. We are just growing really, coffee under the forest canopy.
Organic.
As organic
Well,
as it
everything
can
is
be.
organic there,
everything
right?
is, yeah.
And it just took us over. We decided that after just a few weeks, we extended the trip a couple of weeks. And then I didn't even want to leave then. We would horseback ride, the rivers, the birds, the calm, beauty. Life was a challenge too.
Of
you know,
course. Nothing is
there's no
easy,
Walmarts or Targets or you have to, and you realize the more we lived there, because we decided, okay, let's just come back for a year. We've fallen in love. We don't have children yet. We're young. This is the time to take this
to try things out.
Unexpected fork in the road and take this opportunity. And we said it would only be a year, and that did grow into almost 7 years. Not that we would have to travel and go to London and New York and Los Angeles or Dallas to do shows.
Right, but that was your base for
That
those
was
years.
our base. That was our
Super.
base.
That's
and
beautiful.
so we made
You still
it.
have that place?
We still have that place.
So, okay, so we can go sometimes and
Yeah.
pay a visit.
Yes,
and then maybe,
we can. I wasn't kidding. We
Yeah,
can-
I know you never kid.
You can have a good time
I know
down
you
there.
always mean it.
So-
See you from Colombia, my next show.
So we didn't really need to make money as so many people do in Los Angeles or New York.
Of course.
We didn't need to make so much money. So I was able to do works that were really expansive, things that I couldn't dream of doing now, in a way. Well, it started me on something. So I heard, I had heard that VR was coming, virtual reality, but this was in the early 90s, and it didn't come for another 10 years.
Exactly.
But I'd heard about that. And I started to think, wow, wouldn't it be interesting to try to make paintings where people can walk around inside the paintings? And I started to make big 3-dimensional panoramas.
I love those.
Of the
Aren't they
rainforest,
gorgeous?
of a house on the edge of
Thank
the
you.
rainforest. And the first place that I painted was the only house. It was an old conquistador house. It was the oldest house in our area. And it was across the valley from us, and we would have to go there very frequently so that Lewanne could call her mother or her father or her brother.
Check
or
in
sister.
with the
Family
family
member.
and say, I'm
They
still
wanted to know she
here."
was safe. And so we would, since we spent some time there every single day, I began to realize this is a perfect place to paint a panorama because it's so beautiful.
That's so
You
true.
have this old house on one side, this beautiful forest on the other side, and this garden in the middle. So I'm going to imagine that I'm going to put the viewer in the garden, and they can look all the way around at all the different rooms, into the rooms, through the corridors, out into the garden, into the rainforest, everywhere. And so I made that painting over the course of a year. Lewanne was pregnant with our first child, and I thought about that a lot while I was painting it, that when we're born, you know, we have a path in life, but there's many paths that we can choose. And so that painting, each of those paintings had paths that you could just go into that painting. Yeah.
Exactly. And I must admit, a lot of celebrities and who's who have they're lucky enough, or that they have Damian's artwork and paintings in their homes, and they're his clientels. And I hope one day I save enough money that I can get some of your painting. In the meantime, we can get the prints out. Don't feel too bad. We can always get the prints.
Good.
And
Sales.
and I'm so happy and honored that you gave me this book. You can check it out on his website. But not only that, I'm lucky to have his drawings. Isn't that cool? He did that. Let me see if I can show it. There you go. There you go. Damian, you want to explain that?
Well, these are one-line drawings where you keep the pen on the paper and you never take it off until you finish the drawing.
There
And
we
of course,
go.
Picasso used to do that, and it's a huge challenge. Not many artists can actually. So I start every morning. I do one-line drawings because it's like a puzzle, and it gets your brain thinking and active, and that's how I start each day. And so yeah,
I am so. Thank you so much. That was so thoughtful of
Oh,
you,
you're
and I feel
welcome.
very lucky, really,
You're
to
welcome.
have this. and-
It's a children's. I mean, it's made for adults and children. So it's a wonderful way to open up kids because it's called Secrets of the Studio. They write it as if Damian is an art detective. He's out there, as he did, searching for these studios and telling the stories of what was in those studios, what these artists were surrounded by, and it just reads. It's in French and it's also in English, so it's really a fun book.
That's beautiful,
available
and
on the website.
actually, and it can be a great gift for the kids, especially for the holidays. I think, you know, a lot of children, we want to buy them like different toys and what have you. This is something that stays, especially if you see your kids have a bit of an interest in artwork. Even if you don't see that, sometimes they may have it, you haven't figured that out about them. But these are the little things that can actually, you know, open somebody's eyes to a new
So
path.
I missed out one little piece of the story, I think, which will help.
Tell
because
me, please.
So after we lived in the rainforest, we came back to live in Los Angeles because Lewanne was pregnant with the second baby. It began to get a little dangerous in Colombia, and we thought, let's take a break from this. And we need to put the children in school anyway. So Los Angeles, I was selling so many paintings here and doing exhibitions every year here, it made sense to come here. So we rented a little apartment to begin with near the promenade in Santa Monica, and we put Cosima in school, and Lewanne had the baby. This is from Colombia. That's part of a gigantic floor painting that I did there.
Look at the colors.
Again, people could walk around all over. There's 4 paintings that size, and they all join together seamlessly. We put them on the floor under plexiglass, and people could come in the gallery and walk all over. And they found themselves on the top of a volcano, a little plateau on this live volcano where the Amazon River was coming out of the middle. And so they could walk around, they see the butterflies and the birds and see the river coming out of the middle.
But after painting the rainforest, I think you were saying when we came back to
Yes,
give
so when I
birth-
came back to Los Angeles, there's a close-up of it. When I came, and all the wind is going in one direction, when you walk on it, it's really quite fun. But when I came back to Los Angeles, suddenly I didn't know what to paint. I didn't want to paint swimming pools like my friend David Hockney, because he'd already done that. And I didn't want to paint cars and streets, that's just not my thing. And so the first thing I did actually was I went and bought a computer, because we didn't have computers and telephones and in the rainforest, and computers had been invented, and the internet had been invented. And the first thing I Googled was Picasso's Bateau Lavoie studio, which was the place that I tried to go to when I was 24 in Paris, but it had burned to the ground, it didn't exist. But on the internet, suddenly I found 7 little black and white fragments of photographs from Picasso's time in his studio at the Bateau Lavoie when he was painting Demoiselle d'Avignon.
Right.
Which is in the background of this studio. 8 years later, he hadn't sold it.
My goodness.
He hadn't sold it yet. It was a failure at the time. But anyway, it's now the most important painting in the MoMA in New York. And so I saw these 7 little black and white photographs, and I tried to move them around to try to put them together like a jigsaw puzzle to see if I could figure out what the studio looked like. And I couldn't. Then I began to draw from each of the little photographs, and suddenly I noticed the hand of one of the women from Les Demoiselles d'Avignon in one of the photographs. I looked through the other photographs, and there was the arm of another of the women from the other side of the painting. Then I printed out Les Demoiselles d'Avignon, put that down. Suddenly I could make the jigsaw puzzle, and all of the photographs joined together. And I suddenly became probably the first person since it burned down to know what Picasso's studio looked like. And I painted that. And that painting has shown now in 2 museums. It showed about 2 years ago in the Fleming Museum in Vermont. And there they blew it up onto a huge wall, and people could walk around inside Picasso's studio before going into the exhibition of Picasso's paintings. So I'm hoping they will do that with my other studios. Other museums will follow.
I am sure. Time, unfortunately, is
Oh
running
my
out.
gosh,
I
it
cannot
goes so
believe
fast.
it. Yes, we have a minute to go. On that note, first of all, I'd like to really appreciate your time. I know how busy
Thank
you are.
you.
Taking you away from your studio means a lot, I know, but it's been a pleasure having you here with us. Any exhibitions coming up? Or
Yes, the Zona Maco, which is the biggest show in Mexico City in February, the beginning of February, from the 2nd, I think, to the 7th.
Okay.
And then the Armory show in New York in March, the beginning of March, from about the 7th to the 10th.
And these are all on your website?
These
with
are
the
on my
upcoming
website. Yes,
exhibitions.
yes.
Super, lovely. Great pleasure having you. بینندگان عزیز ممنونم از وقتتون. امیدوارم که این آرت ورک ها رو دنبال بکنید، هنرمندان رو، چه ایرانی چه غیر ایرانی. خوشحالم که تونستم ساعتی دیگر در خدمتتون باشم. تا هفته آینده و برنامه دیگر همه شما عزیزان رو به خدای بزرگ میسپارم. Have a great week. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Yay.